So hi everyone, good evening. Today we'll be starting with Cisco SDN training. This particular training is divided into two. So I will be teaching you ACI Nexus and certain protocols that we will be dealing with in ACI, like VPC, VXLAN, etc. And then there is going to be another trainer, Saif, who will be teaching you SD-WAN and SD access. Okay, so I'm going to be your trainer for the first part, or I can say the first module of this particular course. My name is Madhuri, and I'm the senior data center trainer for NSC, for Nitiz Sharma and Company. And I am CCI data center certified. I was certified in 2017, and I have a total of 10 years of work experience. And I've worked in various companies, all in the networking domain itself. All right. So this is a very short, brief introduction about me. Today, we'll go through what it is, like what is the agenda, okay, what topics it is that we will be covering throughout this particular course. So you might know that this is just SDN training, okay? So SDN related topics training. So this particular training will be for approximately 2 months. SD-WAN, SD access, ACI, all included, total of 2 months, maximum 2 months, not beyond that. All right. So for us today, like I told you, for the module that I'm responsible for, I'm just sharing the agenda for that. Seth, when he handles this particular batch, he will be sharing his agenda, the topics that he will be covering then. All right. So whatever it is that I will be teaching you, that is what I'm sharing right now. So firstly, we will go through introduction for ACI, like what is ACI. We'll have a very brief discussion today. So overview of ACI, benefits of using ACI, right? Components of ACI. There are certain physical components, physical hardware that we would require in order for us to implement ACI successfully. So what are those components? And understanding ACI architecture. So whenever it is that you are combining those components that are required for ACI to function properly, there is a certain architecture that ACI requires, okay? And you have to place your devices, you have to connect, I can say, your devices in that particular architecture itself so that it can work perfectly. All right. So what is all that we will be discussing? So this is a part of module 1. Next is module 2, where we are going to be starting off with the hardware. Okay, so there are certain switches that we are going to be using in ACI. Again, when I talk about the components, I will mention it over there. Okay, you'll be able to understand it over there. So we will be discussing about the hardware of those devices. All right. So mainly ACI requires a lot of switches. So switches ke hardware, right? You have 9500, 9300 devices. These are all Nexus boxes for those of you who I'm assuming you do not know. So these are all Nexus devices. So we will be going through certain hardware aspects of these devices. Okay, very, very important these are. Once you understand the switch, once you understand the hardware of the devices and what it is that these devices are capable of, then understanding the technology also will be easier for you. Next is ACI networking technologies. So once we are done with the hardware, right? Once we talk about the Nexus boxes, the Nexus switches that are used in ACI, then I will be also introducing certain topics, certain protocols like VPC, VXLAN. Okay, VPC you will be configuring in ACI, and apart from ACI, in normal Nexus infrastructures also, there is some concept of VPC, and VXLAN definitely in ACI. Communication between end hosts, between endpoints, they all take place in the form of VXLAN itself. So understanding VXLAN also is very important so that you can understand the packet forwarding that takes place in ACI. Okay. Next is module number 4. I'm sorry, I messed up with the number there. So this is module number 4. This is nothing but basic configuration and operation. So how it is that you set up ACI, right? Like from scratch, what it is that you have to do, certain best practices that are recommended from Cisco. All of that we will be discussing about. ACI fabric discovery. So ACI is a fabric of switches. How is it that the switches are going to get discovered? How is it that you're going to be managing those switches? All of that we will be covering. Next is ACI logical constructs that contain your tenant, application profile, EPG, bridge domain, VRF. So what is this logical construct? In ACI, for your devices, right? For your switches, whatever you want to configure, for so that the communication takes place. It's all in terms of policies, right? So there are quite a lot of policies that we will be going through. Like I said, some of those policies are called as logical constructs. Don't worry about that. I'm assuming nobody knows about ACI, so I'll start from that level. Okay, I will start from the scratch so that everybody understands and everybody are on the same page. But yeah, logical constructs is nothing but certain types of policies. Okay, so you have policies like your tenant, application profile, bridge domain, EPG, contracts. These are all certain logical constructs that are present in ACI. Some other policies, fabric policies, access policies that are very, very important. And lastly, there are a couple of labs that we will be doing. So we have something called as the bare metal lab. We will be integrating ACI with virtual environments so that you can use virtual machines as end hosts, right? As endpoints. Using these physical devices, physical end host or virtual end host, how is it that you can establish communication within the same VRF, between VRFs, which is called as inter VRF, intra VRF, L3 out, L2 out, right? So these are all certain labs that we will be covering throughout our course. Okay, so for all of these modules to be completed, like I said, it will take around 15 to 20 days for me, and then another 15 to 20 days for Seth to complete his module. All right. Until here, are there any questions? The labs will be on the real hardware. Yes, sir. So we have our own data center. We have our own physical devices. They are all physical devices, physical APICs, physical switches. So we will be covering the labs on our devices, physical hardware itself. Yes. And then also another thing before I start off with the class, before I start off with the module is, please do remember that I will be muting you just so that my flow is not broken, so that there is no interruption, there is no disturbance for the other candidates also in this particular batch. If there are any questions, please do feel free to post it on the chat window. I'm constantly reading. I have it open. So if there are any doubts, anything that you'd like to ask, you can ask on the chat window. If I know, I will answer. If I'm not very sure about anything, I will, of course, read on it and I will get back to you with the right answer. All right. What is the ACI version for practice? So ACI version for practice is the 5.x version, sir, because that is what is there in, the latest blueprint that we have for our CCI data center. Okay, so earlier with the 3.0 lab, it was 4.x, but now it is 5.x. So we will be doing it in 5.x. There is the latest version, which is 6.x, but again, I'm just going according to what is the CCI data center blueprint, and we are using 5.x over there. All right. Do we have to schedule labs as in for practice? I'm assuming you are talking about the practice. So if in case, yes, you want to practice labs, then yeah, you'll have to schedule it. You can get in touch with me anytime. So that I can book the slot for you and I can lend that to you for practice. Okay. How many hours for the lab? For you to practice or for me to show it to you during class? For you to practice, how many hours? I'm not really sure about that. You can get in touch with the management, whoever was your point of contact. It could be Aarti, it could be Nitiz. whoever is your point of contact, you can get in touch with them, because it depends on what package it is that you have opted for. So, the hours of practice depends on that. Okay. I'm not really sure because I'm just the trainer here. Study materials and documents, I will be providing it to you. So I will create Google Classroom, and I'll add whoever has enrolled for this particular training on that Google Classroom, so that, all the training materials are centralized over there. You can access them whenever it is required. Okay. So of course, most documents are Cisco related. They are Cisco white papers, but there are certain documents, or I would say certain videos also, that are from other vendors. See, the point is for you to understand the concept, right? At the end of the day, you need to understand what is happening. You need to understand the concept. So I'm not one of those trainers who will say, no, only stick to Cisco. No, you, maybe there are other videos, other documents, right, from other organizations that would make it easier for you to understand the concept. You can read about that. You can watch videos on that. Okay. And then always you can, of course, you can always come back to Cisco and read upon it. For me personally also, when I was prepping for my data center, there were a lot of topics that I was not able to understand directly from Cisco. All right. So I had to look for other means. I had to look at other documentations, make sure that I understood the concept, and then came back to Cisco. So it was easier for me to understand. All right. So there will be other videos, other documents. I'm just telling you before, so that nobody has anything in their mind ki, this is Cisco's training, but you're sending other documents, you're sending other videos. The point is you need to understand, so it does not matter. All right. Recorded lectures will be available. Yes, every single lecture, the recording is happening right now as well. Every single lecture is recorded. So if in case you have any commitments, office commitments, personal commitments, or you're sick or anything like that, you've missed a class or two, it's okay. It's the recording, they are posted on the portal, and you can always access those recordings and view those recordings. Okay, so we will be having classes from Monday to Friday, 6:30 p.m. That is IST. I'm talking Indian time. So yeah, 6:30 to 7:38, I think, 8 o'clock, I think. So we will be ending the class at 8 o'clock, 8 p.m. IST, I'm talking. Okay. Can we also perform multi-pod lab? Yes, sir, you can perform the multi-pod lab. So we do have actually 2 pods, and we are configuring them for multi-pod. So yes, you can configure them for multi-pod. Can we make it around 7 p.m.? So 7 p.m. will be a little difficult for me because I do have classes from 9 p.m. IST again. So at least if I finish the class, if I finish this particular batch by 8, I will have that 1 hour of time for me to, do my personal things and just have dinner and prep for the next class, which is at 9. I would prefer if it is at 6:30. I don't think I'll be able to change this time. Or even if it's at 7, I can only take the class basically until 8. That is what I'm trying to say. I cannot extend beyond 8. And having just 1 hour of class it's too short, I would say, because 1 hour is not enough. So I hope all of you are okay with 6:30 p.m. IST. Okay. Anybody have any other questions? Any other questions with regards to the course? Excuse me. Okay. So I'm assuming nobody has any questions. If there's anything, just drop it on the chat window, or you can even text me personally. It's okay. Either will do. I will get back to you with whatever issues or questions it is that you may have. All right. So I'm starting off with the class today. A very basic introduction. It's the very first class, so I'm going to keep it simple. We'll just have an introduction class. All right. And we'll end it. Can we get the full architecture? Yeah, yeah. Okay. I'll ask the management to basically send it to you. Okay. Okay. Now, anybody, what is SDN? I don't need the full form. Please do not tell me the full form. I'm sure all of you know the full form. But what is the meaning of SDN? Can we perform iOS upgradation labs? iOS, as in, I'm assuming you're asking about the Nexus upgradation, or I would say ACI upgradation. I will show you how you can do the upgrades, sir, but there's no lab that is there that we will be providing you to perform any sort of upgrade on our rack. Okay, I'll show you how you can do the upgrades, of course. If in case you want to perform any ACI upgrades, right, you can do it all again from ACI GUI, from ACI user interface itself. You do not have to go to each of the components and then perform the upgrade. So I will show you the steps definitely, but we will not provide you the access to do the upgrade when you are doing the lab. No. All right. So it's already been upgraded to the appropriate version, but nothing else. You can just do the labs, whatever it is that I have shown you in the agenda table. Okay. Decouples control plane, data plane, centralized management, policy updates. Yes, yes. So SDN basically means, see, like in traditional networks, every networking device has basically 3 planes. Correct? You have control plane, data plane, as well as management plane. What is control plane? Anybody? What is the meaning of control plane? Yes. So this is basically, just give me 1 minute, please. Okay. So like I was saying, control plane, yes, that's exactly right. It's the brain of the device. Okay. Why is it considered as the brain of the device? Because control plane always decides how the traffic should flow. This is always the decision maker of the network, right? So always the decision maker, it decides how the traffic should flow. For example, routing protocols. That's exactly what routing protocols do, right? They decide how the traffic should flow from point A to point B, correct? So the decision maker, the brain of the device is always control plane. Okay. Certain examples, routing protocols, ARP, right? ARP request, that is also control plane. Why is ARP request control plane? ARP request is considered as control plane because you are trying to find out information of the device that you want to communicate with. In ARP request, what do? If this is some host A, this is some host B over here, I have them connected to a switch. ARP is nothing but a normal ARP I'm talking about. Normal ARP is nothing but where you have the IP information of the destination, obviously, that you want to communicate with, but you don't have the MAC address information. The layer 2 information is not there, right? So that is when an ARP request is generated. So what are you doing with ARP? You are basically trying to find out the information of the device that you want to talk to. Finding out the information, it's all related to control plane. Okay, be it L2, be it L3. ARP is, of course, considered as L2, routing protocols L3. They are all finding out, they are all deciding as to what is the best path, what is the best way for the communication to take place. All right. So control plane, this is the decision maker of your device. Data plane. What is data plane? Data plane is nothing but forwarding plane. Data plane is nothing but forwarding of traffic. That's it, right? Control plane decides how and where the traffic should be forwarded. Data plane listens to that decision that the control plane has taken and just forwards the traffic accordingly. Nothing else. Data plane does not have any sort of intelligence. Control plane is where the intelligence mainly lies. This is what takes care of, like I told you, the forwarding decisions are taken place over here in the control plane. Data plane just agrees to those decisions, right? According to the routing table, according to the internal tables that the control plane makes, data plane is just going to forward that traffic, nothing else. Management plane, how it is that the device is getting managed, right? Like your management port, a telnet, SSH, all of these are certain examples of management plane. Okay. Every networking device will always have these three planes: control plane, data plane, management plane. Now, in SDN, the control plane, I'm only talking with regards to SDN in general, okay? In general, nothing to do with specifically ACI. In general, I'm saying SDN is where control plane is separated from the device. Control plane is now decoupled from the device and is present where? The control plane is now going to be present on a centralized controller. Okay, so there is something called as an SDN controller. All right, there is something called as an SDN controller. The controller will now have the control plane of how many ever networking devices it is that you have in your environment. See, normally what happens is in data centers, right, you do tend to have a lot of switches, obviously. There are a lot of switches. You will have your core layer switches, you'll have your backbone layer switches, or your distribution layer switches. You'll have a lot of switches, right? Traditionally, what happens is, like I said, control plane, data plane, management plane, they are all normally present on the same device. See, if the control plane of any of these devices goes down, if the control plane, or I can say, let's just say the device goes down, right? The point is that control plane does get affected. If the control plane of even one device gets affected due to any XYZ reason, it does affect the control plane of the remaining devices in that particular architecture, in that particular network. Okay. Control plane on one device also, if it gets affected, it does affect the control plane present on the remaining devices in that particular architecture. So in order to solve this issue, that was where SDN was introduced. Okay. So what SDN did was, like I said, to basically remove the control plane, because this is the most important plane, right? This is the decision maker. Data plane does not have any intelligence. Data plane just follows what control plane says, right? So control plane is extracted from all of these networking devices, from all of these networking switches, and is now placed on something called as your SDN controller. So control plane decisions, control plane configurations and policies now are all present on this particular controller. Okay, so this way, what happens? The control plane is not dependent on any such hardware, right? It's not dependent on any of the switch hardware. Even if a switch goes down due to, again, any XYZ reason, even if a switch goes down due to any XYZ reason, does the control plane get affected? Now, no. Why not? Because now this is present on your controller level. It's not present on the switch level. It's now present on your controller level. It's now present on your management level, right? So even if any of these switches fail, control plane is still intact. It is still protected because it's not present on that switch hardware anymore. That dependency is not there on the switch hardware anymore, but it has been completely isolated from the switch hardware and placed on the controller. Now you may have a question, but what if the controller goes down? See, again, depending on your SDN technology, you will definitely have multiple controllers. Okay, you normally will not have only one controller, because when you're building data centers, I'm sure you all know that you are always looking to have redundancy, right? Whether it is link level redundancy, whether it is device level redundancy. But the point is that you're always looking to having redundancy. You do not want to have a single point of failure, right? So even in your production environment, you will never ever come across any environment having only one device or having only one controller or having only one link. You'll always have them with redundancy, configured with redundancy. Okay, so normally you will have multiple SDN controllers. If in case one of the controllers goes down, it's okay. You still have the other controllers and your control plane is protected. All right. So this in general is what is SDN, the control plane. What about the data plane? Data plane remains on this particular device itself. Yeah. Data plane remains on the switch itself. The control plane mainly, and of course, management plane is also extracted because it's from the controller that you are now managing the switches. That is obvious. So that's why I did not talk about